If you have questions, concerns, and are just lost when it comes to planning for retirement, meet Steve Hoyl and Derek Caldwell of the Hoyl Financial Group. A lot of people talking about the market, saying, well, why should I be concerned about the market when it's doing great, right? The all-time highs, everything's sunshine and rainbows. But really, when you narrow that down, what are your thoughts on that? Should we be worried about it? Should we just keep going?
Well, I think people should really know their risk score. When people come to see us at Hoyl Financial, we sit down with both of them if it's a couple. And, some people love risk and some people losing $1 totally ruins their life. And I'm just telling you, it's really important to figure out where you are with your risk. And as you get older and closer to retirement, you do not have time on your side to rebound. So it's so important to know what your risk score is, what you're willing to take, and make sure you don't get right up on retirement and get totally wiped out.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you in just a few moments how you can check that risk score. But again, just talking about the market here, you turn on the news, you'll find plenty of reasons that you should be nervous about the economy and the markets. Yet stocks have continued to show surprising strength. Here's market strategist Ed Yardini. He explains to Fox Business what's helping support the stock market right now.
I think we've got FEMO, and that is fabulous earnings momentum. That's really what it all comes down to. I mean, we've got plenty of things to worry about in the Middle East with the Fed, and yet the economy continues to perform extremely well. It's resilient, and we're seeing that in earnings.
Okay, interesting. So what should retirees make of a market that continues to perform well, even when there's so much uncertainty and all these headlines?
Well, Jess, it only takes one market correction to wipe people out. So many people have forgotten about the 2008. It may have not affected them, but it affected their uncle, their aunt, their parents, their grandparents, somebody in their life. And I'm telling you, things look really smooth sailing, but you really have to know those numbers. How much risk are you willing to put up with? So many people's lives change when it gets close to retirement. Some people have to retire early because of health issues and things like that. And it's so important to plan and plan well for that.
And when it comes to planning well, as you talked about a few moments ago, it's also about knowing your risk score, right? How much risk are you taking? And as you approach that retirement finish line, you got to take some risk off the table. I know a lot of people say, well, if I'm taking, risk off the table when it comes to the market, Steve, how do I make income? How can I capitalize on any of these gains?
Well, I think it's really important to carve some money out of what you have in the market and come up with a really strong, predictable, sustainable, dependable income plan. It's paramount in any retirement plan. A lot of people used to live by the 4% rule. I'll just start taking 4% out, I'll be fine. Well, that doesn't really work out. And when we do have that market correction, what goes up can come right back down. You don't want to be using discounted dollars to fund that income each and every month. So when you have a really strong income strategy, you know that you're going to have money no matter what's happening on Wall Street. You know what's going to happen on your street. Each and every month or every 2 weeks, you're going to get that money in your bank account. We call it mailbox money. But that income strategy is so important, Jess. And we help people really figure out how much money you need in income, and then where's that money going to come from, and then get that income strategy in place. It's the cornerstone of a really strong financial plan.
There's a lot of people heading towards retirement, and their backup plan is very simple. I'll just work a few extra years if I need to. But retirement doesn't always happen on your terms. In fact, more than half of Americans end up leaving the workforce earlier than they had planned. That's according to Transamerica Center of Retirement Studies. If you ask yourself why, well, it's often because things they didn't see coming, things like layoffs and company changes or even health issues. It makes it harder to keep working. So if so many people don't get to decide when they retire, Steve, how do you plan for the possibility that working longer is just not going to be an option?
When somebody comes to Hoyl Financial, we sit down and talk about, let's look at several dates. What is your optimum date to retire? And then what if something really changes your life dramatically and you have to retire early? Jess, I see a lot of times after doing this for 38 years, it's not always you're having to retire for you. You may have to do it for a spouse. I've seen people have to retire. One of their children becomes incapacitated, or they have a parent. We're so often seeing people in the sandwich generation taking care of their grandkids and taking care of their parents as well, Jess. So, it's often that. So when we're sitting down in that plan, we're going to talk about what if you had to retire in 12 months? What does that look like for you? And you talk about a deer in the headlights sometimes. It's huge. But Jess, we need to know those numbers. We need to know those numbers well. And we need to have that income strategy mapped out. The great thing, as we were talking about earlier, having an income strategy for this is it rolls up, let's say 7%, 8%, 9%. Even I've seen a few at 10%. So you often can't grow your money as much as you can grow that income strategy. So if things change, all of a sudden you can kick that income on. If they don't and you get to work as long as you want to, that's great. But Jess, it was interesting. I was in West Texas the last couple of weeks, and yesterday morning I opened up Facebook, and there's a convenience store called Pack-A-Sack. There's two big ones. One's Toot and Totem, one's Pack-A-Sack. Pack-A-Sack had 24 stores. Well, they sold out to another chain called Casey's. So all of a sudden those employees are like, do I have a job? Will I have a job? How long will I have a job? What happens to my retirement monies? All of those questions. So, we're seeing layoffs, we're seeing buyouts, but Jess, we're also seeing a lot of job changes because of AI. Now, we don't call it that, but so many people come to see me and say, Stephen, in 24 months, I'm probably not going to have a job because of AI. And it's real, Jess, and it's really happening. So when you get started immediately, don't procrastinate. Get started, have that plan, you're going to be good to go. But when you don't, and all of a sudden you get that pink slip, Jess, it's not a good day.
No, not at all. And you talk about being proactive, right? Creating that plan today. And I want to touch on something you just talked about here. AI is changing the game of people's work longevity, quite frankly. And I know, listen, everyone goes to AI now for pretty much anything. Where can I get this? How do I do this? But when it comes to your finances, Steve, when it comes to planning for your retirement, is it a good idea to start plugging in some information and saying, hey, AI, chatbot, create my retirement plan?
Absolutely not. It's the same story as people come to see me and say, my brother-in-law, or on TikTok I heard. Well, AI is right there with it. And no, it's not a retirement plan. It's funny. Had a guy come see us last week, and that's what's picking all of his stocks right now is AI. So, Jess, it's scary out there. I mean, he was not scared of risk. He had no idea what his risk score even looked like, Jess. So AI is a big deal. But you've got to use AI in the correct way, not for your financial future. What I tell people, Jess, is making one wrong turn in those first 5 years before you retire and those 5 years after. We call that the retirement red zone, can wipe you out. So one wrong AI decision, boom, it's over, Jess.
Steve, we've all been there. We know there's certain moments in life where you realize something has changed. Not in a bad way necessarily, but your priorities just aren't the same as they used to be. Here's comedian Sheng Wang, and he explains.
But sometimes you do things you thought you would never, ever do. Like I recently bought pants from Costco. That's a big deal. That's a new chapter in your life, right? Because when you buy pants from Costco, that's when you don't care anymore. That's when we let go of our egos and we begin our spiritual journey. Because you hear people say stuff like, oh, I'm not concerned about other people's opinions. I don't care about what they think. That is just talk until you back it up with the Costco pants purchase. That's how you let them know. He for real. He don't give a damn for real. He wearing Kirkland pants. Don't mess with him.
Steve, how often do you sit down with people when they say, well, wait a second, how am I doing compared to your other clients? I mean, and what is the moment in planning where they realize that it's not about other people, it's about what they want and what they need?
Well, I hear that all the time, Jess. But again, I tell them, you're comparing yourself apples to oranges. You need to figure out what's right for you. What's your right strategy? I had some folks come in. Her sister did business with us. Her sister was 14 years older and really bad health. And so she wanted to do the same thing her sister was doing. I'm like, no. You've got a lot of time probably. You've got, you need to plan for the next 30 years. You don't need short-term planning. You need long-term planning. So I think it's so important for people to be realistic about where they are and what's important to them, not what's important to somebody else. I hear it all the time about my neighbors. This lady sent me to you, and this is what she did. You're different. Just when people talk about that so often about what somebody else is doing, I think it's really hard for people to change mentalities. You see these people that are great savers, but all of a sudden they've climbed the mountain, and it's time to come down the mountain, and they don't really understand how to start doing things differently and spending money and making it work. And I think a lot of people are so scared that they've worked so hard to save, they can't let go and start enjoying life. So I think emotionally, it's a really, really tough thing for people. I really do. I also think people got to sit down and find out what their priorities are in life. Is it a new house? Is it a new car every 2 years? Is it travel the world, whatever? And then model those expenses and how much money you need to what you want to do. I think that's so important. And I just think having a strong income strategy is just the paramount part of that. For a lot of people, they're worried because they've saved and saved and saved. We put that income plan in place. We have to help people sometimes spend that money. That's why you have this money. You need to start enjoying life. And it's so scary to people because they've always a lot of people have gone without, Jess. And now it's that final phase of life. They really need to enjoy retirement. It's everything. But then come up with a plan. Have it defined. What does it look like for you? Retirement is interesting, Jess. After doing this 38 years, it's different for everyone. So we have to figure out what's important to each person so they get what they want in retirement. So Jess, when people really decide what they want to do, that's why our retirement review is so important, because we're going to sit down and we're going to really start at square one. First, we're going to figure out where they've been, what they've saved, what are their fears, their hopes, but most of all, what are their dreams? And then we're going to move forward putting a plan together. But it all starts with having a 2-hour review. So give your boss 2 more years or give our team at Hoyl Financial 2 hours. We'll do that review and we'll figure out exactly what's important to you in that final phase of life called retirement.
According to a recent survey by Bank of America, fund managers are leaning into stocks at record levels. On the other hand, their protection against the stock correction, and I'm talking about using mostly bonds and cash, was at an 8-year low. So if your financial advisor was pushing that narrative and you really disagreed with it, Steve, what can somebody do?
Well, I think somebody really needs to understand the risk scores we talked about earlier on the show. It's so important. And this article said they have zero protection against a downturn in the economy right now. The most since 2021. I think that's kind of scary, Jess. One correction could really wipe somebody out, especially if they're in that retirement red zone, those last 5 years right before retirement. I think it's really, really scary. Things can flip on a dime. It's interesting how the market has grown so much, even with all the craziness geopolitically. I think that's really interesting, Jess. They say they've hit a hyper bull level. I just think people need to protect themselves. I think they need to be prepared. What if we do have a correction? But what I know that's tried and true, if you follow what your risk score is and you take the appropriate risk, you'll be good to go for the long term, Jess. Don't worry what your neighbors are doing. Don't worry what other people are doing. You need to make sure you're on your aim game, if that makes sense. So what you really need to do is call Hoyl Financial today. Let's sit down. Let's look at where you've been, what you're doing. Let's do a risk score analysis on you. If you have a spouse, on your spouse, and let's get started today. Let's find out, most of all, what is important to you in retirement, Jess. It's everything. Is your retirement advisor you have today, is he a good fit? You don't know what you don't know. And I think if you got a second opinion from Hoyl Financial, I think your eyes would be wide open and you'd find things that we do just a little bit different. But really, at the end of the day, it's retiring well, retiring confident. And that's what we're going to do. That's all part of retiring Texas style at Hoyl Financial.
If you'd like to sit down with Steve and Derek or a member of the Hoyl Financial Group, visit retiretexasstyle.com.
Investment advice offered through Hoyl Wealth Management, a Texas-registered investment advisor able to provide investment advice in states where it's registered, exempt, or excluded from registration. Content contained herein should not be construed as an offer or solicitation for investment advice or for the purchase or sale of any security, insurance, or other investment product. Investments involve the risk of loss, including possible loss of principal. Please consult with a qualified financial, tax, accounting, or legal professional before implementing any ideas or strategies discussed here. Content provided is obtained from sources believed to be reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to its accuracy or completeness. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities offered through Steve Hoyl, Texas Insurance License 716036. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. Steve Hoyl is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Steve Hoyl is licensed in your state, please call 806-371-9473.